Hey, gentlemen, quick question. Have you ever felt the weight on your shoulders, wondering what it's really like to be a man in today's society? Well, you're not alone. And today we're going to turn that uncertainty into a powerful truth. Imagine transforming your masculinity into something divine that resonates with strength, faith, and purpose. Let's dive into what it takes to turn your masculinity into godliness in three simple but profound steps. The first step to this transformative truth is to develop a God-centered devotion. Let's look at Second Peter chapter 1 verse 3 because here we're going to see clearly what God says about this. And this is such an important verse that every man must know to put godliness, to establish godliness in his masculinity. It says, his divine power has given us everything we need for a godly life. Now that is a transformative truth. Now that is something that we need to just let it sink in and we need to reread. Basically, that means the following: the foundation of a man's godliness starts with God. In God, our masculinity will find everything it needs to be godly. Now, the flip side of that is outside of God, our masculinity will be impacted, influenced, and defined to be twisted and perverse. And so, throughout the last couple of years, I have seen this happen to the masculinity of man. And so that's why I'm making this video, just to get that conversation started in this circle of godly men. So to avoid from our masculinity becoming twisted and perverse, because it's not founded on the word of God, to avoid that, we must be men that develop a God-centered devotion. For example, each morning, commit to seeking God through prayer. Take a moment to either digitally or physically read the word of God. Take a moment to, as you're driving to work, as you're starting your day, put on your headphones, put on the radio, connect a speaker to your Bluetooth, put on your TV, get your tablet, and hear the word of God. Let your spirit, man, be exposed to the word of God. Why? Because just like a tree draws strength from its roots, you and I, as men, must draw strength from our relationship with God. And so my morning looks something similar to that. It starts by either reading or hearing the word of God. I'm either reading a chapter or a book on the word, or I'm reading a digital book or a physical book. And so I dedicate time to receive the word. I also, at some point in my morning devotion, there's a time of prayer, a time of just being with God, either through worship, speaking to Him, presenting petitions. And there's a moment where I just hear God. And if He speaks, then I'll take what He said, I'll write it down, I'll take note of it. So the first step is to develop a God-centered devotion. And I want you to think about the following person in the Word. Let's think about the story of David, a shepherd boy who spent countless hours alone with God. Those moments where it was just David and God, those moments where it was just him and God alone, took this young boy, and through those daily moments of this young boy being alone with God, God made him into a warrior and a future king. David's heart through these moments was molded, was worked on by God. And that's how we end up reading in the word that David's heart was after God's own heart. And that is what sets him apart from other male figures in the word of God. So the same thing will happen to a man today who dedicates alone time with God, a man who has a devotion, a God-centered devotion every day. Those moments, God will do something in your heart. God will do something in your life that will set you apart from other men. When you center your life around God, your masculinity becomes a force for good, a lighthouse of hope in a world that desperately needs it. So, how can you put this into action? Well, start by carving out time. Block out. Literally, you could put it on your calendar. Block out time each day for God. Set an alarm, put it on your calendar, write it down, create a sacred space, and treat it like this. Listen to what I'm going to tell you now, because this can truly transform your time with God. That time that you have, that devotion, that time that you have with God, treat it like the most important meeting of your life. When you see it like that, when you treat it like that, you're going to be fully invested in that moment. You're going to give your undivided attention in that moment. You will remove every single distraction in that moment. And when you do all that, that's when you come out changed, when you come out transformed. That's when God works in you to set you apart. That's when something begins to happen to your masculinity, and godliness starts being established and rooted in our masculinity. Now let's move on to the second step. And the second step is simply this: say no to worldly passions and distractions. In 1 Timothy 4:7-8, we are challenged. When you read this verse, receive it as a challenge from God to you as a man. It says, have nothing to do. Have you ever had a conversation with either your father when you were younger, or with a mentor, a coach, and maybe they started that conversation with these words, have nothing to do? Well, this is the word of God speaking to us, and it starts that way. So let's pay attention. Let's pay attention to what we're hearing, to what we're reading right now. It says, have nothing to do with godless myths and old wives' tales. Rather, train yourself to be godly. What a powerful, impactful moment. What a moment to have between father and son, between mentor and mentee. What an amazing advice that is, that the word of God, that God put in his word for us. So basically, this is a call. This is a challenge to us as men for discipline and focus. Being godly doesn't just suddenly happen to a man. I know, at least for me, it didn't suddenly happen. At least to the hundreds and thousands of men in all my years of ministry that I've met, that I've encountered, that I've had relationships with, that I've pastored, that I've mentored, that I've coached, it didn't just suddenly happen to them. From one moment to another, they weren't just suddenly godly men. Why? Because this verse tells us that there's a process. This verse tells us something so important. And from my years of experience interacting with men, this is my conclusion. Men that are godly are men that train themselves to be godly. And men that are not godly are men that did not invest in being godly. So, if you've ever been a man that has worked out, exercised, or gone to the gym, there's common phrases and words that are used in that space, like pain, sweat, tears, like no pain, no gain. They've made t-shirts, they've made hats, they've made a lot of different things with those phrases. Well, this verse is giving us a heads up. And I'm using this verse to give you a heads up that to be godly, It requires determination, dedication, sacrifice, commitment, effort, and intentional work. The world is full of distractions and temptations that can pull a man away from training himself to be godly. And we see this, and there's perfect examples and illustrations. I want you to imagine your favorite athlete. Maybe your favorite athletes from football, from basketball or baseball or soccer, or maybe it's boxing, maybe it's mixed martial arts, maybe it's golf. Imagine your favorite athlete, and this athlete is preparing for a championship. And through this preparation, he makes a decision to sacrifice late nights, to sacrifice junk food, to sacrifice distractions for what? To achieve greatness. Now, that is the example, that is the standard that we as men must follow to be godly. It requires grit and grind. We need to embody that. We need to embody the grit and grind so that we can be and live a godly life. And so remember, sacrifice today for success tomorrow. What you're going through now, what you're saying no to now, is so that you have the opportunity tomorrow to see what you have not seen, to be who you have not been, to have what you do not have. When you choose to say no to distractions, you create space for masculinity to be founded on godliness. So it's a no to something so I can say yes to establishing godliness in my masculinity. So to put this into practice, identify distractions in your life right now. I want you to look around your life and identify distractions. Are there toxic relationships, unhealthy habits, mindless entertainment that are holding you back, that are keeping you from truly living a godly life, from truly modeling masculinity that's founded on godliness? Well, the solution is this, is 3 words: cut them out. Replace them with activities that build you up. Replace them with activities that lead you to discipline and focus, godliness on your masculinity. Read the word, hear the word, spend time and surround yourself with like-minded, godly men who push you to grow in godliness. After you're done hearing this video, hear it again and hear it again and hear it again. Why? Because this is what will happen to your faith in the area of godliness and masculinity. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of God. So there has to be a continuous hearing over and over and over. And if you hear the same thing over and over and over, your faith in that area will grow, 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 grow. So if this is fresh, if this is new, if this is different, if this is something that you're not used to hearing, one time hearing it will do much in you, but hearing it over and over and over again will start establishing these truths, will start growing and growing your faith in this godly masculinity. So let's go and move on to the final step number 3. So finally, step 3 is to be an example to all believers. Let's look at 1 Timothy 4:12. And it commands us the following. It says, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. Your life is a living testimony, a reflection of Christ. So if you're asking yourself, all right, I'm understanding, I'm tracking with you, I'm feeling you, I'm hearing you, but what does godliness on my masculinity look like? Like, how can I describe what that looks like? Like, how can I identify that my masculinity has godliness in it? 1 Timothy 4:12 tells us this is the profile of a masculinity with godliness. The profile is that it sets an example to other believers. Since I'm talking to man and this is for men, I'm going to specify it to say that it sets an example to other male believers. In what way? Their masculinity sets an example in godly speech, godly conduct, godly love, godly faith, godly purity. So that's the profile. Those are the areas that when godliness comes into our masculinity, that godliness will impact those areas of our masculinity. It will impact your speech. It will impact your conduct. It will impact your love. It will impact your faith. It will impact your purity. And so if we see a man that is an example to another male believer of Christ in his speech and his conduct, love, faith, and purity, that man has established godliness in his masculinity. So I want you to think about a mentor, a leader, someone in your life who inspired you through their actions. Their integrity, love, their commitment to God left an impact, left a mark that shaped your journey. And so now it's time for you to be that person to another man. So there's a man who needs an example, who needs someone that they can look up to, be inspired through their actions. And I want to motivate you, I want to encourage you to not look down at yourself. To not say, that's not me, that's for someone else. No, it's for you. You got men, you got a circle of influence of men that you can impact through your actions, through your speech, conduct, love, integrity, through your purity. So it's time for you to be that person that inspires another man. And that looks like this. Your life is the sermon that the world is watching. So it's time for us to live authentically and purposefully. It's time to show other men what it means to walk in faith, to love deeply, and to serve selflessly. So to live this out, how can you live this third point out? Start in your household with your children and your spouse. We're used to starting things outside of our household. We want to go help the neighbor. We want to go help the world while we neglect the first ones and most important ones given to us by God Himself, our spouse and our children. So you will always, always, always hear me lead you, refer you to the first ministry that God gave a man. And that ministry is called his family, his spouse, and his children. We start there, and from there, we go out. We need to change the pattern and tradition that we have been modeled by men that came before us. They started out, and if they could, they would go in. And that has led to countless marriages being broken, dysfunctional families, bad parenting, etc., etc., etc. So we want to be that generation that does not repeat those mistakes. So where do we start? Where can you apply this third point of being an example to all believers? First, in your household, be an example to your spouse and your children. Then you extend out to family, friends, acquaintances. And how does this look like? Share your struggles and your victories. Be vulnerable yet strong. You never know who might be watching. You never know what might inspire your children, what might inspire your wife. So as we land, as we conclude, and you put the effort in, you put the work in to develop a God-centered devotion, as you say no to worldly passions and distractions, and as you take the challenge to be an example to other believers, specifically male believers, you will find your masculinity transforming into a powerful force for good. Maybe you say, what's my masculinity for? It's to do good. It's to reflect Christ. It's to lead other men to follow in the steps of Christ. It's to lead other men to find themselves, to establish, to take their masculinity on what the word of God says, not what another person says that they think is what the word says. No, but what the actual word of God says. So this isn't just a checklist of 3 points. It's beyond that. What I'm sharing with you is the beginning. It's to establish a lifestyle that requires great sacrifice and intentionality to achieve. So every single day is a new opportunity to embody the man God has called you to be. So here's my challenge to you. Embrace this journey with passion. Embrace this challenge of establishing godliness in your masculinity. Surround yourself with like-minded, godly men who will encourage you, who will hold you accountable, and will push you to grow to be more like Christ. In the company of godly men, we can achieve greatness. So what's left to do? What's left to do is take these 3 points and go one by one and put them into action. Let your life be a testament to the greatness of God's love, to the impact of God's love in your life. So I want you to do me a favor before you stop watching. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video the moment you're done with another man that needs to hear this. Until next time, stay bold, stay dedicated, and keep hustling for that godly life.